You were born in Mexico in the 1990s, a time when hope was devaluing faster than the peso. Your biological father left when you were 3 years old. Your mother tried to fill that void with a stepfather whose only real talent was turning oxygen into the smell of alcohol. To him, you weren't a son. You were an unexploited financial asset. His business model was simple. He sent you to major intersections under the scorching sun with a clear target. 50 pesos a day. It may sound like nothing today, but back then it was triple the minimum wage. If you came back with 49, dinner was a beating. You quickly understood that waiting for other people's charity is inefficient. Why wait for others to give you money when you can take it yourself? So you stopped asking and started taking. While other kids cried for coins, you diversified your portfolio into petty theft. Quick hands, angel face, zero remorse. Thanks to that mindset, he never hit you again for lack of money. You learned your first valuable lesson in this world. People survive by taking what they need from others. One day, your agile fingers pulled a treasure from the pocket of a distracted businessman. It wasn't a wallet. It was a gray brick, a first-generation Game Boy. For the first time in your life, you had absolute control over something. You became obsessed with those monochrome pixels, so much that you forgot your daily 50 peso quota. That night, the beating was inevitable. Bruised and humiliated, you hid in a dark corner, seeking comfort in your game, thinking that at least you still had that small joy. But you made a fatal mistake. You forgot to mute the sound. That 8-bit electronic beep alerted the beast. Your stepfather ripped it from your hands. For the first time, the instinct to protect something overcame fear, and you hit back. The result was another brutal beating and immediate expulsion into the cold street. Wandering with an empty stomach, you reached a nearby bus terminal looking for shelter. There, you saw a driver throwing unused rolls of tickets into the trash. At that moment, your criminal brain saw a market opportunity. You could resell them. But there was a technical problem. You needed the specific hole punch to validate them. The next day, you executed your first hack. You approached a driver with your most innocent face and asked where to get that tool for a school project. Humans are always the weakest link in security. He gave you the exact address. You went there, and you stole it from the store. Everything was ready for your first big score. With the stolen punch, you had enough tickets to travel for free for the rest of your life. But bus tickets don't feed you, so you decided to break the market. You started selling rides to your neighbors for just 10% of the official price. The business was a massive success. For the first time in your life, your pockets were heavy. That's where your true vocation was born. You understood something crucial. Hard work is for people with no imagination. Fraud, on the other hand, is infinitely scalable. By age 12, you were already dreaming of buying your own house. But every financial bubble bursts. They dragged you to the police station, and an officer asked you the most terrifying question possible. Who is your legal guardian? Panic froze your blood. You knew that if they called your stepfather, he wouldn't come to save you. He would come to fulfill his obligation with his fists. In that moment of desperation, your criminal mind evolved. You stopped being a petty thief and became an actor. You burst into tears with surgical precision. You built the perfect narrative. You weren't the mastermind, you were the victim. You told the police that your stepfather forced you to steal, that he ran the fake ticket operation, and that he beat you if you didn't meet the quota. You mixed the undeniable truth of his abuse with the lie of your innocence. The police investigated. Neighbors confirmed the screaming and violence. Your plan worked perfectly. They saw a defenseless child, not a future con artist. Your stepfather was arrested. You were handed over to the foster system. Fate smiled on you. You were assigned to a young, wealthy, and fertile couple. Not only did you avoid prison, you received a massive social promotion. In your new home, you received everything you had lacked before. Hot food, a soft bed, parents who adored you. But what truly captured your soul wasn't love. It was a beige box. This was light years away from your old gray brick. You became obsessed. To satisfy your curiosity, your parents hired a private tutor. It was their worst mistake. He taught you syntax. You discovered the language of God. Programming. A world where you were the creator and the rules were absolute. Then the internet boom arrived, and you noticed a fascinating truth. Most users treated their computers like magical toasters. They knew nothing about cybersecurity. To test your theory, you created malicious code disguised as a digital love letter. Human stupidity and curiosity did the rest. More than 100,000 people opened the email expecting a secret romance and received punishment. Their screens locked into an infinite loop of an animated cat shaking its butt. You didn't ask for ransom. Money is vulgar when you have power. You just wanted to prove you could humiliate the world from your bedroom. You went on an unstoppable hacking streak, exploiting not software flaws, but human ignorance. Your victims were so many that the press gave you your first noble title, the butt-wiggling cat hacker. One day, you got bored of playing with small fish. Your ego needed a real challenge, so you targeted the largest predator in the ocean, the CIA. You didn't use supercomputers or lasers. You used something far more dangerous, patience. With a few command lines and extensive open-source research, you dug into the personal networks of high-ranking officials. You discovered something hilarious. The most powerful spies in the world are terrible at protecting their own privacy. You found pet names, home addresses, phone numbers, and anniversary dates. These tiny details people ignore are the keys to the kingdom. You chose your prey, the CIA director himself. Here, you executed your masterpiece, vishing, phone-based social engineering. You used voice modulation software. You programmed yourself to sound not like a teenager, but like a middle-aged man tired of life. You called his internet and phone provider's support line. The operator, an underpaid employee who just wanted to finish his shift, asked the standard security questions. Thanks to your research, you had every answer. In less than 5 minutes, you reset his password. Now you had full control over the personal email of the head of global espionage. And there it was, the Holy Grail, a security clearance attachment containing social security numbers, medical histories, and dark secrets of thousands of intelligence agents. You could have sold it to foreign powers. You could have dismantled the U.S. intelligence network and started a war. But you didn't. Money didn't matter to you. You just wanted to leave your signature on the wall and prove you were smarter than them. The next day, you began data mining. You didn't read files randomly. You applied graph theory to map relationships. Soon, isolated fragments formed a terrifying mosaic. You discovered that the line between government and organized crime isn't a barrier. It's a revolving door. You saw money transfers, encrypted emails, and operational orders confirming the unthinkable. The agency wasn't fighting the cartels. It was managing them. Instability in conflict zones wasn't a foreign policy failure. It was a feature of the system, designed to maintain the flow of black money. You felt like a god seeing the strings that move the world. But while you drowned in conspiracy theories, they traced your digital footprint. Arrogance made you careless. The CIA director didn't call local police. That would have been too bureaucratic. He sent a black ops team, men without insignia, without flags, without warrants, operating illegally on foreign soil. National sovereignty is just a suggestion to these people. They were already at your door. They didn't knock. They breached it with a battering ram, the sound of splintering wood mixed with the screams of your adoptive parents. They were handcuffed on the floor, not understanding why their house was filled with paramilitaries speaking tactical English. Agents stormed your room, ready to neutralize the target. They found only the hum of servers and an empty chair. Because you're not an amateur. Paranoia is a hacker's cardinal virtue. You had installed micro cameras on every streetlight on the block. You saw the unmarked black vans 3 minutes before they stopped. From a distant rooftop, you watched through binoculars. You saw your parents dragged away like criminals for the simple crime of loving you. You watched your perfect life collapse in real time. You had lost everything again, but this time you had the truth on your hard drive. Now you are a ghost. You live in cheap motels with cockroaches as roommates, stealing Wi-Fi from low-end cafes. And while your body hides, your mind dives deeper into the most secure servers on Earth. With every encryption layer you break, you realize the CIA agent list was just the tip of the iceberg. What lay beneath wasn't information. It was the architecture of modern horror. You found folders with code names straight out of sci-fi movies, but with real-world tragedies as results. You saw blueprints for massive media manipulation campaigns. You discovered that the news people watch on TV isn't reality reporting. It's scripts written months in advance. Then there were the accidents. Opposition politicians with sudden brake failures. Curious journalists who committed suicide by shooting themselves twice in the back. The agency's creativity in killing was admirably macabre, but the file that froze your blood was the one about the war on drugs. For years you were told the US government was fighting the cartels. The documents said otherwise. They weren't fighting them, they were managing them. There was irrefutable proof that the agency funded and armed certain criminal groups to destabilize governments in Latin America and maintain political control. Chaos wasn't a mistake. It was the strategy. Now you held the power to bring down empires. Your first impulse was that of a desperate son. Call them and demand an exchange. Your parents for silence. But your logical brain intervened. You don't negotiate with terrorists, especially when the terrorists have government badges. If you tried to negotiate alone, you wouldn't be a negotiator. You'd be a loose end. Your voice, no matter how loud, would be silenced by another tragic accident. To survive and save your parents, you had to stop being a lone wolf. You needed amplifiers. You needed allies with as much to lose as you. The game had changed. This was no longer hacking. It was asymmetric warfare. You cut your hair in a public bathroom and swapped designer clothes for secondhand rags. Now you were invisible. You moved from cheap cafe to cheap cafe, using unsecured public Wi-Fi, hopping from IP to IP before CIA algorithms could triangulate your location. One man against an empire is suicide. You needed allies. First, you sought legitimacy. You found a veteran investigative journalist, once respected, until he asked the wrong questions about the defense budget and the government destroyed his career. Now he was a professional corpse, writing on a blog no one reads. You sent him an appetizer, a low-level classified document, real enough to prove your identity. He took the bait instantly. He begged for a face-to-face meeting. You refused coldly. In espionage, physical meetings are traps. Communication would be encrypted text only, ephemeral and untraceable. He agreed. You had your narrator. Now you needed brute force. You dove into the darkest forums of the internet, places you don't access with a normal browser. You contacted a cybercriminal syndicate. They weren't hacktivists with ideals. They were digital mercenaries who stole credit cards for sport. The negotiation was tense. They didn't want money. They wanted power. You offered the crown jewels, dirt on U.S. senators who controlled cybersecurity legislation. In exchange, they would provide their massive bot network to amplify your message when the time came. The deal was sealed. You had the truth in one hand and a global megaphone in the other. The chessboard was set. It was time to stop hiding. It was time to make the call Washington never wanted to receive. You took a deep breath and dialed. The voice on the other end didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a bored bureaucrat. They said they wanted to cooperate, that your parents' safety was their priority. They almost convinced you. Then your trained ear noticed something, a slight audio delay. It wasn't bad reception, it was a routing loop. They weren't negotiating. They were buying time to triangulate your exact position using cell towers. You hung up. Survival instinct took over. You bolted from the cafe, jumping onto your motorcycle. Your intuition was prophetic. The moment the engine roared, 3 black vans blocked the street in a perfect pincer formation. Agents exited with assault rifles. But you were already a blur on the horizon. The hunt began. They had V8 engines and tactical training. You had desperation and deep knowledge of urban infrastructure. They gained on straightaways, their armored bumpers inches from your rear wheel. You knew you couldn't beat them on speed. so you beat them on intelligence. You remembered something most people ignore. Modern cities run on systems. Industrial control technology from the 1980s with almost no security. Days earlier, you had scanned the city's traffic network. You found a backdoor wide open. You approached the largest, most dangerous intersection in the city. With a pre-programmed command on your phone, you sent the signal. Latency, 0. Your light turned bright green. The cross-traffic lights turned green too. You crossed the intersection at 100 kilometers per hour. Behind you, the world turned into noise and twisted metal. Civilian cars, obeying their green lights, slammed into the CIA vans. A wall of steel and smoke formed instantly. As sirens and horns filled the air, you vanished into the alleys, protected by the chaos you orchestrated. The adrenaline quickly turned to venom. You were furious. If they wanted to play dirty, you'd burn the board. From your hideout, you activated the Scorched Earth protocol. You sent the decryption keys to your allies. The journalist, the cybercriminal syndicate. You waited for the media apocalypse 1 hour, 2 hours, nothing. The internet was unchanged. The silence was more terrifying than sirens. You tried contacting the journalist. No response. You tried hacking his smart home security. Everything was offline. That confirmed your fears. You hacked the neighbor's Wi-Fi and took control of their video doorbell. The camera gave you the perfect angle. The journalist's door opened. 3 men in biohazard suits exited carrying industrial black bags. They weren't forensic police, they were cleaners. They had erased the messenger and were removing him in pieces like medical waste. Terrified, you played your last card. You messaged the cybercriminal group demanding the attack. Instead of confirmation, your firewall screamed. Red alerts. They weren't attacking the government. They were running a reverse trace on your location. Reality hit. You had made the oldest rookie mistake. Believing there's honor among thieves, the government simply made them a better offer. They bought their loyalty. Your head was part of the payment. You were alone, betrayed, cornered. You weren't looking to negotiate anymore. You wanted mutual assured destruction. From a server routed through 12 countries, you pressed enter. In seconds, terabytes of dirty data flooded the inboxes of the BBC, CNN, Al Jazeera, and every major newspaper on Earth. But editors can be silenced. You needed something they couldn't ignore. You hacked outdoor advertising systems in Times Square, Shibuya, and Piccadilly Circus. Giant screens stopped showing soda ads. They began broadcasting classified documents. You interrupted live TV broadcasts and football matches. For 3 glorious minutes, you forced the world to look at the truth. But every data packet was a digital breadcrumb. By making yourself so visible, you became the brightest beacon in the electromagnetic spectrum. Sirens were replaced by something more sinister. The chopping sound of helicopter blades. You jumped on your bike and accelerated, trying to disappear into the urban maze. You spotted a narrow alley too tight for armored vans. You thought it was your escape. You raced into the darkness, convinced you had outsmarted them. Mistake. You weren't escaping. You were being herded. The alley wasn't an exit. It was a tactical funnel. At the end, you didn't find freedom. You found a wall of shields and blinding lights. They had studied your routes, predicted your moves, and set the ambush before you even started the engine. A flash, a dull impact, then darkness. The game was over. They caught you. You sat in the back of an armored van, handcuffed at wrists and ankles. Your mind calculated survival odds in a maximum security federal prison. The result was 0. You accepted you'd spend the rest of your life watching the sun through bars. But fate had one last twist. Suddenly, the world shook. An 18-wheeler came out of nowhere and smashed into the convoy, blocking the road like a steel wall. You heard gunfire, not chaotic gang shots. Professional, controlled bursts, shouting. Then silence. The rear doors flew open, flooding the van with blinding light. 2 silhouettes stood against the sun. One wore dark sunglasses. The other checked an assault rifle. The man with sunglasses looked at you like inspecting merchandise. "Is this the kid?" he asked. The other nodded. "That's him. Move, kid. If you don't hurry, you'll be here for the forensics team. You had no choice. You jumped into their unmarked black vehicle as it sped away from the chaos. Finally, you spoke. Who are you? Why are you helping me? The two men exchanged a look. We're like you, the driver said. People who saw the strings that move the world and were betrayed for cutting them. You smiled faintly despite the fear. Then we won, you said. I released everything. The documents are on Times Square screens on the news. The world knows the truth. The government will fall tomorrow. They laughed. Dry, cruel. The man with sunglasses shook his head and handed you a tablet. Look. You stared at the screen in horror. No riots, no trials. Headlines talked about a celebrity divorce and a new dance challenge. Your classified documents had been labeled AI-generated conspiracy theories and buried by the algorithm in under 10 minutes. No one cares about the truth, kid, the man said. People prefer a comfortable lie to a complicated reality. The game was rigged from the start. A hollow pain hit your stomach, worse than any beating. Your sacrifice meant nothing. The system didn't just control crime, it controlled perception. You have two options, he continued. You can get out here and let the CIA find you in an hour, or you can come with us and learn how to play the real game from the shadows, where nobody applauds, but where it actually matters. You looked out the window. The world kept spinning, indifferent to your tragedy. You nodded slowly. Your new life had just begun. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.